Welcome back, everybody, to another sporadic episode of the most put us on your number one receiver and forget about him for the whole game podcast on the internet, the AFC Northcast. The voice,
We're locked down.
absolutely. Number one, first team All Pro. Forget about the other team's top guy.
Is it fair to say that right now everyone is on AFC Northcast Island?
Oh, I was going to talk about Darrelle Revis. I was going to say right now we are like 2007 Darrelle Revis when he had that crazy graphic with like he went up against like T.O., Ocho Cinco, Randy Moss, like all those guys when he played for the Jets and like gave up like 2 catches to each of them for like nothing yards.
Yeah, he was great. He was great in almost a tragic way because after that like stretch of 5 games, no one threw at him anymore.
Yeah.
So like you had to watch coaches tape to basically realize how good he was after that.
And that is the burden that the top corners in the NFL bear. You know, it seems to go like that with everybody, not as extreme as someone like Darrelle Revis, but it seems like guys bust onto the scene and they'll have a buttload of interceptions one year or something like that, and then once they're a known commodity, people just shy away from them a little bit.
Yeah, I bet Darrelle Revis has like 30 total interceptions in his career. It's probably not that many.
Yeah.
Hey, good news. We did make it onto Facebook.
I see that.
Hello, Facebook. Facebook, you're on AFC Northcast Island.
If you have not joined us before, I'm Joey, and I am here as just about always with Chad. That's
Howdy, team.
The smooth, calm, silky voice that you hear, and I am
Stiller Nation represented officially.
the loud, intense voice that you hear. And our first segment every episode is we got to come up with a sweet name for it. Beer Corner with Chad.
It doesn't matter what the name is because we all like drinking beer. We're football fans. Today, we're representing the newest brewery out of St. Johnsbury, Vermont, Whirligig. Whirligig is the name of the seeds of maple trees, which spin like little helicopters when they fall out. So there's a little non-football tidbit for all you suckers out there. This is the local. It's from their first ever release. It's easy drinker. It's nice, easy. I would say all the beers I've tried from Whirligig so far are understated. If you have absolutely no taste, like Joey, with his Ravens fanhood and general drinking of cheap, shitty beer, you'll probably love Whirligig as a segue into quality beer because it's not crazy. It's not made with Cinnamon Toast Crunch or 95 pounds of hops or anything like that. It's just pretty good. So, and honestly, it's not just Joey. It's like 98% of AFC North fans. Dude, we're from the Midwest. We don't know what's good for us.
Blue collar.
We know what a $10 case of beer does to our wallets and our brains. And we embrace that. And then we yell at people that don't like the same football team as us. So get ready to hear about how Marlon Humphrey sucks.
Yeah, good luck. So, as you may have figured out, having a brain fart on the word that I was looking for, by what we've talked about so far and the title of the stream, we are going to talk about the top corners on each team in the AFC North. What's up to my wife who says sup dweebs, Brenna. Shout out Brenna.
Love you too, Brenna.
Super supportive. So we decided that was Marlon Humphrey, Joe Hayden, Denzel Ward. Those are pretty inarguable, if you ask me. And the last one, we decided to talk about Trey Waynes, and that's a name that if you only follow AFC North football, you may not be familiar with. He is a free agent signing by the Cincinnati Bengals, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, and he figures to plug into the starting lineup right away, more than likely, especially with how Sean Williams performed last year. Williams, Jackson, whatever. William Jackson.
Williams was the strong safety. Jackson the third is the corner that had a pretty nice first year or two and kind of had a little bit of a dip last year. So we thought that it would be nicer for Bengals fans if instead of talking about a corner that could play much better this year, but we'd be forced. We don't like making fun of the Bengals. We don't like that. We don't take pleasure in it. That's a lie. We love it. It's like the favorite thing to do. Second favorite, Browns. Sorry, Justin. We decided it'd be more fun to talk about a guy with a ton of potential that we've never seen do anything stupid or bungly. So it's all potential. It's all potential for Mr. Trey Waynes. So let's get started with Trey Waynes. What do you think about this guy, having now watched upwards of 4 minutes of his highlights, plus whatever you can remember from Minnesota games you've watched?
All right, first I have a gripe with YouTube. Get your fucking shit together, YouTube. There's an embarrassingly low amount of cornerback highlights on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's pitiful.
What's that all about?
It's pathetic. So, first thing I noticed about Trey Waynes is that he is bringing some sick, dope hair flow to the Cincinnati Bengals defense. He's going to fit right in with B.W. Webb and Drake Kirkpatrick. Like, the whole damn team is going to be just flowing out of the back. So
good point. Didn't even consider that.
That's right. So team chemistry,
Joey.
Very important. You know, Trey Waynes figures to fit right in here. So Trey Waynes, obviously he wasn't their number one. I don't know where he fit in the depth chart in Minnesota. Xavier Rhodes, I imagine at least to start last year, was their number one corner.
Yeah, it was a mess.
But he got the most targets out of any of these guys that we're going to talk about today. And we picked Trey Waynes because we're going to talk about these guys in what we kind of anticipated to be the reverse order of how we felt like we would rank them. Which isn't to disparage Trey Waynes. These other three guys are pretty exemplary. And
everyone has made a Pro Bowl here except for Trey.
And without having looked at the other divisions closely at all, I would venture to say might be the best number one corner division in the league. I'm going to say that right now. Definitive.
Let's just go ahead and say it.
Yeah.
By far the best number one corner division in the NFL. Deeply researched. You don't want to hear the numbers because we don't bore our listeners, but we ranked it out. AFC North. Trey Waynes, part of a prestigious group. So anything you saw in the highlights besides the hair?
No. Cornerback highlights are all the same. I mean, it's the highlights. It's only like you have to be like really in tune with a player and watch them a lot to really get the whole picture on them, because that's when you're going to see them getting torched or burned on double moves or blow an assignment and hang a safety out to dry, anything like that. So I'm going to come at you with numbers, because that seems to be like our give and take recently. It's like, I'm going to be the numbers guy and Chad's going to be the gut guy. And
okay. Do you want to do numbers first then?
So
throw some numbers at me?
Yeah. So he's targeted more than any of these other guys. And the reason that 96 targets last season. So that's his fifth season in the NFL.
Joey.
He gave up 5 touchdowns and a 74% completion percentage. So that is why he has the most targets out of this group. Anytime you can complete 74% of your passes in any scenario or situation as a quarterback, you should be encouraged to do that. He's the only one who gave up a quarterback rating of over 70. And the quarterback rating he allowed was 107.9. However,
Joey, I've heard that that's good.
However, it might be worth mentioning that Trey Waynes is a little bit of a bulldog. because by almost double, he has the lowest missed tackle percentage out of this group, 7.9% missed tackle percentage, which
Really?
is really good for a defensive back.
I would not have guessed that, Joey. Your numbers are teaching us. We're learning.
Look at that.
This is
So,
incredible. This hour of the day.
last in the group in passes defense last year, last in the group in interceptions, even though Denzel Ward missed 4 games. Um, so from Trey Waynes, you're not going to get the classic lock him down and forget about him corner. He's going to allow some catches. He's going to give up some touchdowns, but you're getting a tackler. And so hopefully what that translates to is you're not giving up the big play. So that's what the Bengals are probably looking at as far as the numbers go.
I'll bring a little gut. Also, even though you bring the numbers, I would call myself, if you're the fashion guru of our podcast, I would be the nerd because while you watch 3 to 5 minutes of highlights, I usually bring the heat with 7 to 10 minutes of highlights watched at least. And amongst the highlights of Trey Waynes I watched was a comparison of him coming out of college with actually Marcus Peters. They were both very highly rated coming out of school. And then just kind of analysis of his game with Minnesota. And kind of what they talked about is that he excels in man coverage, particularly press. He is pretty physical, which is impressive because he's also really fast. He ran a 4.3 second 40. So that's really good. I'm just going to say when it's really good as emphasis for people that don't follow the combine because it's a super boring workout video. That's very fast. So he's physical and fast. That's a great combination. Where he seems to struggle is zone coverage, which kind of surprised me because when I watched his highlights, when he wasn't in press coverage, which I thought he did a nice job, he like get his hands on the receiver early. He'd kind of redirect their route, which probably impacted early timing and stuff. He would sink into this like soft coverage that I'm very familiar with as a Steeler fan because I think they teach the corners how to never be within 5 yards of anyone. And he would maintain that cushion. And I think he liked to do that because once the quarterback throws, I think he likes to really break downhill. He's a very aggressive tackler. He uses his body. So I'm surprised that he never misses him. But you always see him making these really aggressive tackles coming downhill. And that means to me that he's sinking just as fast as the receiver is trying to close that cushion. So he's not breaking early. Like a guy like Marcus Peters, for example, who we're not going to talk about today much. He might start in soft coverage, but not back up at all because he's looking to jump like a short route. You don't really see that kind of stuff out of Trey Waynes. I would say that if you're a Cincinnati fan, the play that you want to watch is last year he had an interception against Green Bay where he was in single coverage against Davante Adams, who basically was the only person that Aaron Rodgers thought was on the team. So, they moved every receiver to the other side of the field, which was the right side, and he was alone with Trey Waynes on the left side. And he faked a post, which means he ran like 10 yards down the field, and he took one step like he was going to kind of run diagonal towards the deep middle of the field. And Trey Waynes didn't bite, and then he ran back to the outside, which I think is called a flag route, but let's not get caught up in the verbiage, people. So he cuts inside, runs outside. Trey Waynes doesn't bite, and he undercuts the route and actually goes up and fights Davante Adams for the ball and takes it. So good hands, good physicality, because it's not like he just completely undercut the route. They both had their hands on the ball, and he took it. And this is like a top-tier wide receiver. If you play fantasy football and you don't know who Davante Adams is, you're going to lose your money this year. Yeah. So that's kind of what you're hoping for, right? A guy that can get physical, go high point of football, not bite on a double move route to get beat for a touchdown, and take away, at least at points, the other team's best receiver and create turnovers. He didn't do it a ton, but he is capable.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there you go. And he's just a fifth-year player, so I think he's 26. So coming into his own, Lou Anarumo hopefully gets him in there, gets him acclimated, and he can contribute.
Yeah, and I'd say also Cincinnati was terrible against the run, and he's a willing run defender. So I think when you're as bad as they were, you're an all hands on deck kind of attitude. So hey, get in there and get a couple run stops, Trey.
Yeah,
We'll take it.
get those tackles up.
So yeah, he could be good, especially since he may not definitively be their number one. He might not have to follow guy across a field or whatever. He could just take his side of the field. And I think Cincinnati. I don't know if they might have overpaid him. They paid him a ton of money, but who cares? We're fans. Look,
That's right.
don't get caught up in the money until they cut your favorite player because they want to keep him. This
Yes,
year, just be excited. He's new, he's fun, and he's fast. And he's got long hair, so you could tell he's fast because it just flies.
that's right. And you're Cincinnati. You don't give second contracts to good players who deserve money. So YOLO, just enjoy him while you have him.
True that. True that. YOLO. Love that.
All right, so we are going to move north a little bit closer to Canada into the state of Ohio and talk about one Denzel Ward, who only played 14 games last year. Um,
Tell me some numbers. I just need some more numbers in my life.
well, I'm about to give you all the numbers. So, this is what the numbers tell you about Denzel Ward: best in the group, quarterback rating, completion percentage, and touchdowns given up. So, he, out of all these guys, may be and was a very clear number one corner on this team. Um, but
Sorry, greedy.
did not have the least targets. Had more targets than Joe Hayden. Um, so he is more of your prototypical cover guy. He had the highest missed tackle percentage, which we kind of know. Greg Williams even talked disparagingly about his tackling mechanics and technique and how he's going to get hurt and this and that. So definitely not as willing a tackler as Trey Waynes. He would rather usher you to the sideline or the ground. um,
He's a very polite young man.
but he makes up for that by keeping you from receiving the football. So that leading completion percentage was 48.2% completions. He had 11 passes defensed, only gave up one touchdown all year. So he's out there on number one guys, giving them the business in there.
Well, I don't know if you remember this. Denzel Ward made the Pro Bowl in 2018, which was his rookie year. So it didn't take him much time to adjust to the speed of the NFL game. And that's because he's so effing fast. Like Trey Waynes ran a fast 40, but Denzel Ward just is always like in the hip pocket of the person he's guarding. Is it? Here's a philosophical question for you, Joey. Can you be too good of an athlete?
No, never.
Agreed. But I think that Denzel Ward's rookie nature and maybe he's still mastering the mental elements of the game, because like every time I saw him get an interception, it wasn't his guy. It was him coming off of his guy because his guy wasn't open at all. Like, why would you even throw it to him?
Yeah.
So he would come off his guy and jump into the fray on another person's route. And that's when he would get the interceptions or like a deflection that came to him. So I think too good of an athlete. I think he's so good that he just doesn't get these interceptions. Well, hello. And I think as the game slows down for him and he kind of starts to see things before they happen, I think he's going to start to do, and I'll bring him up again, Marcus Peters types things where he invites you to make a throw and then goes and takes it. Whereas I think right now, because he maybe doesn't see those things coming yet, he's just going to say, throw if you want, but I'm going to be the one that's like first to get there because I'm better. I'm just like a better athlete.
Yeah.
Fast fact for you. I like to bring up moments. Did you know, you probably remember this because Justin Tucker never misses field goals, sometimes Denzel Ward just blocks him. He's got multiple field goal blocks in his career already, and one of them was on your man, opera singing, Hall of Fame likely candidate, Justin Tucker. So this guy he's just everywhere. He's just a crazy, fast, good athlete. I love him. I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen in this division before, with the likes of Ed Reed, who Bill Belichick is on record saying if he had Ed Reed, he would never not have him on the punt block unit. One of these guys is just like a freak athlete amongst freak athletes, and why would you not maximize it? But yeah, I think in the same vein, once he just grows and the game slows down even more and his football IQ rises, he becomes more wise in the game. Yeah, he may start playing some games with quarterbacks, and
his potential is crazy, which is kind of frightening to say because he made the Pro Bowl his rookie year.
Yeah.
And he was like one of the lowest in terms of completions percentage in the NFL his second year. So it's like, oh, great, you can get a lot better. And I have a 39-year-old quarterback that doesn't give a shit where the defense is.
Yeah.
So it's like, those numbers don't work great. I will say from the highlights, and again, 6-7 minutes at least of watching Denzel Ward. Plus, I mean, look, we watched him last year. We watch him all the time, right? Like, I can just go with my memory. Denzel Ward, he's not like he's not the kind of tackler we like to romanticize here in the AFC North. He doesn't knock people's heads off, but he does wrap up. And I will say this, he does use his head. Like, when he sees help, he'll go for the strip. So, like, some of those might be missed tackles. I don't know how they tally that stuff up, but he's gotten a few forced fumbles by going for the strip when there's other people in the gang bringing the man down. So I like the way he uses his head. He's not the biggest. He's not going to be the most physical. So I'm not worked up about the tackling. I think he does what he needs to do, and he knows his game.
Agreed. All right. I called Trey Waynes a bulldog, but unfortunately, he's in this group with probably the quintessential bulldog as far as defensive backs go in the NFL, and that's Joe Hayden. Talk about a guy who's just like a gamer. He's 5'11", kind of a small guy. All of these guys are remarkably close in size, by the way.
Yeah, I stopped writing down their size after Denzel Ward. Can't tell you why. Just forgot, I guess.
But he had the second lowest missed tackles percentage of this group, but led all of them in passes, defense, and interceptions. And I mean, that just goes to show you that, like, he's always around the ball, and that's what Pittsburgh saw. That's what made him a Pro Bowler in the dog days, the cold, the ice age in Cleveland when they were winning 5 games over 4 seasons and shit like that. Like,
yeah. He played 7 years in Cleveland, and they thought he was on the decline, so they released him. Pittsburgh picked him up, and he just made a Pro Bowl in his 10th year in the league. 5 interceptions, 17 passes, defense. So basically, he's getting in between the quarterback and the receiver on a pass at minimum once a game.
And he played almost 100 more snaps than the next closest guy that we're comparing today last season.
Dang. So he's on the field all the time.
Yeah.
That's not a surprise. The Steelers don't have a lot of depth at outside corner. I was like, of all these guys, I kind of struggled with how to summarize Joe Hayden the most, and maybe you did it with, like, he's a gamer. He's just like around. He's always around. Like, I didn't even really. He's like I would call him closer to a Denzel Ward style tackler than a Trey Waynes. Like, he's not going to blow anybody up. That's not really what he does. He's like opportunistic, And I think my favorite play of his, and I've talked about it a few times for our repeat listeners, but against Arizona, he was lined up on the outside receiver on the right side of the offense, and there was a slot receiver in the inside, and his receiver ran a fly. They just ran straight down the field, and he was following, but he was kind of keeping his eye on the backfield, and he saw the quarterback, Kyler Murray, look into the slot receiver, and he came off of his man and dove Superman style into the ball to catch it, to undercut the route. It wasn't his assignment. Like, it just wasn't. There's just no way. So he's 11th year in the league now, 10 years last year. He knows the game. He knows what's coming. I think that Denzel Ward probably has a higher ceiling than him, but you could see a career arc that is similar, starting out with a lot of athleticism and a lot of talent that you use, and then the mental game kind of keeps you in the league for a long time. Totally fair for Browns fans to hope for more from Joe Hayden. Totally fair for Steelers fans to hope Denzel Ward is a Steeler in 4 years. Who knows? You can drop him when you pay him too much and he has one bad year, and we'll just take him because we don't know how to draft corners. So we'll just take Denzel Ward after his 7th year, and everything will be cool in the game. Yeah, Joe Hayden's great, and he's eventually going to decline, but I don't know.
He arguably had his best season, in Pittsburgh this last year, and like you said, returned to the Pro Bowl after a couple years of not being there, and there's not
life is going to be easier with Minka behind him. So I think that even if he loses a half step or whatever amount of steps mean anything, he's going to be able to maintain focus on his assignment and the play that's unfolding and take advantage of his mental game. Yeah. Look, Steelers, we're playing chess, okay? We're playing chess. Joe Hayden's playing chess. Some of you guys are playing checkers. Trey Waynes, checkers. Denzel Ward, checkers. Marlon Humphrey, I don't know. I think he's just punching people in the face. He's just flipping the board over.
Yeah. So let's talk about old Marlon Humphrey. Joined Joe Hayden on the AFC Pro Bowl team this year, and was first team All-Pro corner. Really emerged. We talked about the Steelers' struggles drafting corners. The Ravens, it would appear, do not have these struggles. And it goes all the way back to Dwayne Starks, Chris McAllister, Jimmy Smith, even. So Marlon Humphrey is just another guy in the line there, and so his nickname, and I don't know who gave it to him since he was in like high school, was Fruit Punch, and so this year specifically he kind of grew into that in the pros with all the Charles Tillman peanut punch stuff that he was doing out here, and I think that those splash type of plays, that's what makes guys all pro as a defensive back. Like, it's the turnovers, it's the scoring touchdowns. He's the only one of this group that scored touchdowns this year. He scored 2.
Both on fumble recoveries, if I'm not mistaken.
One of them was a fumble that he forced himself, as Chad probably can painfully recall, in Pittsburgh.
That wasn't the touchdown.
You're correct.
But I can painfully recall
digress.
It. Well, we're going to talk about it.
So, yeah, he did not lead this group in anything that I would consider is replicable, other than yards per target. So he had the lowest yards per target and yards per completion of this group. And he also had more forced fumbles and more fumble recoveries and more touchdowns, but we kind of already talked about that stuff. But 3 picks, 14 passes defensed. He's got some tackles for a loss, 58% completion percentage, and other than Trey Waynes, Out of the incumbent cornerbacks, if you want to call them that, had the most targets of the other three guys. So I think part of that is the Ravens, their rotation. They didn't, even though he is a number one corner, they don't really treat anybody like a number one corner.
Sure.
We already talked about Hayden having almost 100 more snaps than Humphrey. Humphrey's second on that list. They like to rotate their guys and keep them fresh, and so. But yeah, I mean, he had his third season last year, and he's undeniable as one of the top corners in the league, and maybe even though he's first team All Pro, I think as far as national recognition goes and like name recognition, like I think he's probably still underrated.
That's natural for you.
Nobody believes in us.
Sure, right. Nobody believes. Maybe that's because you
don't
fancy
go
pantsed
there.
your way into the playoffs and then got totally upset by an inferior team, so nobody gives a shit about you yet.
Maybe.
But I digress. Marlon Humphrey is very good. He's by far the most physically imposing player that we're going to talk about. And you see it everywhere in his game. He's the only corner here that tackles with any sort of
tenacity,
imposition of his will. Like he can actually not hurt, not in a mean way, but he can like hurt. He can knock the wind out of you. He can rattle you physically when he tackles you, and you see that in his highlights. You also see it in his passes defense. He plays corner a lot like a safety. He separates receivers from the ball by hitting them hard a lot. Not so much like Joe Hayden or Denzel Ward will get a pass defense by jumping the route and swatting it or whatever, which, I mean, Marlon's capable of that, but you see him just hit players a lot as a way of separating them from the ball, which is great. He's a real son of a bitch, basically, and and it comes out in moments. And one of the great moments of my whole life of loving Juju, which has been 2 years, was in the first game against the Ravens as a massive underdog with no quarterback or offense to speak of at all. Juju Smith catches a crossing route over the middle of the field, and Marlon Humphrey tries to punch the ball out of his hands, and Juju just stiff arms the shit out of him and makes him look like a little child, and he falls down, and Juju runs for a 65-yard touchdown. And I was laughing and texting you,
yeah.
and you were ignoring it, and I was laughing and texting. And it lasted about an hour and a half, maybe, because that was the second quarter. And in overtime, the Steelers threw a very similar crossing route to Juju Smith. Marlon Humphrey went for the same move, but this time he punched the ball like 87 feet out of Juju's hands. They both went to the ground, and then Marlon, son of a bitch that he is, managed to get up and go pick it up. He is an all-star, all-pro player that hustles like he's trying to make the team. He hits people like he's trying to make the team. He's just got that, like, I don't know if you want to call it a street mentality or if that's like racism. I don't know. He's just like, he's a very hard-working player. Like, he never stops working hard, which is awesome. I mean, if you have a football player that hits people and he takes the ball and he's always running fast and trying really hard, I mean, you like him. Like, you like him, you cheer for him. And he also pisses people off. Like, he rattles the receivers he's playing against, which wide receivers are divas. So when your corner is making them upset and getting them all antsy in their pantsy and trying to fight a guy that they're going to lose to, you like that too. So Marlon Humphrey is like probably your favorite player. I think he's a son of a bitch. I hope Juju gives him another stiff arm this year.
He ends up fucking choking out OBJ.
Yeah. Which was, that probably was one of his highlight plays.
Yeah. Yeah, he's exceptional. I'm pumped to have Marlon Humphrey on this team, and hopefully
second youngest of the group.
The Ravens lock him up sometime soon.
So, yeah, you think so. So he's in his fourth. He's in his fourth
this is
year.
the year to do it.
So it's I mean, even as well as the Ravens draft corners, it's hard to imagine them letting him go because Jimmy Smith is older and Marcus Peters is, he's an acquisition
He's a
that
wild card.
Humphrey is the foundation of that group. I'd be very surprised if he's not kept. So we talked about these guys. They're all pretty good. We talked about them in our hypothetical reverse order of goodness: Trey Waynes, Denzel Ward, Joe Hayden, Marlon Humphrey. After watching these players, would you rank them differently?
I think the only change I would consider making is putting Denzel Ward above Joe Hayden, but I just think that that's highly disrespectful to Joe Hayden, and so I don't want to do it. Also, I'll get told in other places that it's just because I'm a Ravens fan and I hate the Steelers and I can't be objective about anything. So,
All right. Well, I'll do it for you. Joe Hayden is awesome, and I love having him on the team. He doesn't cost a ton of money. He's great leader. He's a great everything. He's like 8 years older than Denzel Ward, and I think like he's not as good. Like he's not physically as good at the job. Mentally, much better. So in a
yep.
given year, he can maybe outpace him in statistical metrics. But like, dude, Denzel Ward doesn't let people catch the freaking ball. Like he just doesn't. He blocks kicks. He does all the stuff. I wouldn't even blame a Browns fan for saying they'd rather have him than Marlon Humphrey. Like I think his ceiling is such that it's homery. It's homery. It's a fan thing to say, but it's a totally forgivable fan thing to say. He's a lockdown corner that in 2 years people could universally say he's the best corner in football. It's not outlandish to say that at
I
all.
think that's fair. I think if my cousin Vinny walked through my front door right now, he could convince me that Denzel Ward's the best corner of this group.
Sure. 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 He's very that's a great. What can I say to that?
So yeah, I mean, the top three of these guys are all very, very close.
Trey
You
Waynes
have
has
to
some stuff to prove.
think
Yeah.
that Joe Hayden, his clock is ticking. 10 years is a long time for a corner. Um, you see a lot of like position moves and things like that with the older defensive backs, and so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But like you said, having Minka back there, and the emergence of Steven Nelson, and having Mike Hilton, like that could prolong his shelf life a little bit.
Yeah, and also like I'm not gonna make a ridiculous comparison. I got that out of my system when we were doing Chase Claypool, but Steven Nelson is good. Like in man coverage last year, Pro Football Focus had Steven Nelson in the top 10 quarterbacks and cornerbacks in the NFL, higher than Joe Hayden. So he's a younger player. The Steelers aren't going to go like straight into the dark dungeons of the life they used to lead in the secondary right away. They have talent elsewhere. Steven Nelson was excellent last year. Their whole secondary was. You could make the case that Terrell Edmonds was not excellent because he doesn't do the splash play stuff. But there is strong evidence that his mental awareness of the game is really growing. Like he's a big reason that Minka was able to transition so quickly because he was communicating to Minka the assignments and stuff early on. And so there's good stuff there, even if he's not making the type of plays that you like to see a safety make, because you're used to Ed Reed or Troy Polamalu. But yeah, Joe Hayden's definitely towards the end of his career. So obviously, if you're picking who you want out of this list, he could even be last because he might only play 2 more years. But he made the Pro Bowl last year, and he took the ball away from a lot of suckers.
Yeah, he did. My only question about Edmonds is what's his relationship like with his brother? That's how I judge my safeties now.
My best guess is that he's jealous because his brother officially has more interceptions than he does. His brother, who is like the fourth string running back for the Steelers, has more career interceptions than Terrell Edmonds' first round pick. So, I mean, he's probably embarrassed. He's probably ashamed of himself. I would guess that he eats at the kids' table at Thanksgiving. Um, yeah, he's a beta.
Maybe
He's
he
got to
should
prove it
go
this
on
year.
a siblings retreat with the Thomas brothers.
Look, they're gonna go on, dude. We've got multiple siblings. We got the Watts. We got
Yeah,
the Watts.
yeah.
Like the Steelers, we're a family. We're not just a collection of athletes, right? We're not just a collection of, oh, me first. I want a great statistic and put a big gold chain on me or whatever. This is a team. This is a family. It's about accomplishing a journey together called Super Bowl. Some of the teams in our division are pretty familiar with that. The Ravens have a couple. It's very cute. The Steelers have a tradition of Super Bowl victory. So it's just different. You know, it's different to have a tradition than an anomaly than a never having have it happen before at all. So we're all kind of in different stages of development. And, you know, Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, excellent corners, get to be part of a really incredible tradition. Hopefully they'll bring one home. We're in our second hand. We're working that second hand now. Did I brag enough?
No, I think it's appropriate.
I think in like the 2 years I've been on this, I've never bragged about the 70s. It's not something I do. I try not to do that. It's not, especially as a person. Look, I know you can tell. I'm a young man. I was not alive to watch those games. I have no business bragging about it. It's got like nothing to do with my fanhood. My fanhood is because my cousins were older than me and I looked up to them. They love the Steelers and I love the Steelers, and that carries on today. So, you know, 70s are great. Lynn Swan's great. Steel Curtain's great. I'm talking Troy Polamalu. I'm talking Rod Woodson. I'm talking Fast Willie Parker. I'm talking
There you
Alan
go.
Faneca, next Steeler in the Hall of Fame. And you better hope that Alan Faneca makes the Hall of Fame, because guess who's better than Marshall Yonda in every measurable metric? Alan Faneca.
I bet you Marcel Yonda makes it first time up.
What? What?
He
I
will.
hope he does. I
He
think he
will.
deserves it, but he should not make it before Alan Faneca.
No,
We'll
no,
argue
he's
that
got
one
5
of
years
these
to
days.
wait. If Faneca's not in there in 5 years, it's highway robbery. I thought he was
Dude, he
getting
should
in
have
this
been in
year.
line. Dude, he should have. That was killer. Luckily, the Steelers got like everybody else in that was nominated.
Yeah.
So
And some,
I
and Bill
can't help
Cowher.
it.
Surprise.
So many amazing people that are part of this thing. Like, how can you shut any of them out? You know, how can you shut them out? They're just so great. You
Send
know,
them
it's
all.
hard.
Willie Gay,
Yeah.
Ike, send them all.
I was actually reading on Bleacher Report that they're thinking about adding like another building to the Hall of Fame, and it might be all Steelers. Like they might just make
It
it
was
like
one of
the
those
wing.
Bleacher Report slideshow articles.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's really good. Dude, this is like our fastest podcast ever. I don't think we have much more to talk about.
I
You
know.
want
I
to talk
started
about?
looking down and it was like, oh, half hour left. If only we had
We could
something prepared that we could talk about, but
we could talk about NASCAR getting rid of the Confederate flag. We could talk about protests.
that's not very AFC North of us.
Hey, you want to talk about how the NFL is just a total shit show of trying to take advantage of people?
Uh,
Let's just bring up the NFL rule that during COVID, to protect the players, no jersey swapping.
yeah.
No jersey swapping.
Like
I
they're
just
not
want to
just
say
going to
I'm thankful.
mail each other their jerseys anyways or swap them in the tunnel. Like these
I
guys
agree
just
with.
spent like 3 hours spitting and sweating on each other. Like who cares?
I think the NFL is onto something here. I think the true spread of COVID is related to poor laundry practices. And I think this is not a mask thing. This isn't a vaccine thing. This isn't even a hand washing thing. This is a laundry thing. So I want everybody out there that's a listener, start taking your laundry seriously. I don't want you putting on anyone else's shirt for sure, for sure. And definitely no wearing those pants twice, okay? Or especially those undies. You know who you are. You know who
Dean.
you are. You got to keep that because look, the NFL is on top of their stuff. They have the best and the brightest minds trying to make sure they make billions and billions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
So I really think like, look, get those socks washed every time. Go heavy on the starch too. Can't hurt, right? Can't hurt. I don't know what the science is on that. Look, I don't know the science. I'm a medical professional, but I don't know the science of starch relation to COVID. I do know this. Do that laundry, no jersey swapping. I think we're safe. I think we're safe.
Thank heavens for no jersey swapping. Player
Do you
safety
want
first.
So, people might be wondering, when are we finally going to cover the Cleveland Browns draft? Joey, do you wanna
Well, Chad,
lay the path?
this wraps up today's episode. And tune in next week for the 2020 Cleveland Browns draft recap.
100% serious, for sure. We've made a promise. We keep them every time.
That's right.
Just like the laundry thing, we'd never lead you astray.
Have a good week to month ish. Training camp starts soon, maybe. So maybe we'll be here a little more frequently.
Yeah, you guys ready to hear about some 6th-round picks
Like
dominating running back versus linebacker drills?
like rookies report tomorrow. Some maybe.
Sports are back.
Maybe.